How to speak to yourself and manifest success. Before starting the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Shiva stood in front of the mirror, deep in thought. For years, he had indulged in a habit he barely noticed, talking to himself. It wasn't that strange. After all, everyone did it. Some call it self-reflection, others see it as mind chatter. But what Shiva began to realize was that this quiet inner dialogue was far more powerful than he had ever imagined. He took a deep breath. "What am I saying to myself?" he muttered, catching his reflection as if waiting for an answer. The answer had been in front of him all along: his life. A direct reflection of his inner conversations. The rise and fall of his fortunes, the moments of happiness, frustration, and joy, they all followed the tracks laid down by the way he spoke to himself, both consciously and subconsciously. Shiva remembered the old adage, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." Yet only now did the truth of those words fully sink in. It wasn't just thinking, it was the inner speech, the constant conversation going on in his mind, that had shaped his world. Determined to change his life, Shiva dove deeper into the study of this phenomenon. He learned that to steer his life in the direction he desired, he had to control not just his thoughts but also his inner conversations. The first step was to put off the old man, the former self trapped in negative thinking patterns, and embrace a renewed mind. In ancient scriptures, he discovered that speech is the image of the mind. If he was to change his mind, he first needed to change his inner dialogue. Not just the words spoken aloud, but those unspoken, mental conversations that carried with them the weight of his belief systems. Shiva had always been a man of action, but he began to see that action, without aligning his inner speech, was futile. He recalled the passage, "The world is a magic circle of infinite possible mental transformations." And within that circle, there were infinite possibilities for mental conversations. Shiva realized that each conversation had the power to create reality. He now understood his function and mission in life. He could act with purpose, using the creative force of his inner speech to manifest the world he wanted. Shiva knew that before, he had acted unconsciously, reacting to life's events without recognizing that they were merely reflections of his inner dialogue. His misfortunes, his struggles, they were all manifestations of his mental conversations. He had blamed others, external circumstances, for his problems. But now, he could see clearly that the power to change lay within him, in his conversations with himself. He recalled a story a friend had shared, about a woman named Priya. She had struggled with her employer for years, convinced that he unfairly criticized her work. Priya had argued mentally with her boss every day, playing out scenarios of rejection and frustration in her mind. It was a cycle of negativity that reinforced itself, day after day. Only when she changed her inner conversation, imagining her boss praising her and thanking him in her mind, did her reality shift. Her employer's attitude changed overnight. The tension dissolved, replaced by appreciation and respect. It was a striking example of how inner conversations shape the world around us. Shiva couldn't help but wonder, what inner conversation am I tied to? What unseen track was guiding his life? He began to observe his thoughts more closely, paying attention to the subtle dialogues that colored his daily experiences. He knew that to truly take control of his life, he had to make these conversations conscious and intentional. His mind flashed back to a verse he had read, "The Lord from heaven is within all of us." Trying to become self-conscious in the body, Shiva understood that this was the higher self, the second man, trying to emerge. But to do so, he had to master the word, the inner speech. Only by mastering his inner conversations could he mold the world into a likeness of the kingdom of love and success. The ancient prophets said, "Be ye imitators of God." Shiva asked himself, how would I imitate God? The answer came from deep within. God calls things that are not seen as though they were seen, and the unseen becomes seen. This was the way to manifest anything, by imagining the desired outcome, seeing it as already real, and aligning his inner conversation with that vision. It was the same method Priya had used with her employer. She had seen herself praised before it happened, and the outer world had no choice but to conform to her inner reality. Shiva knew he had to do the same. His inner conversations would represent the world he wanted to live in, and so he started to be mindful of every word he mentally spoke. He recalled a profound statement, "Every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof." It wasn't just the spoken words, but the internal dialogue that mattered. Words had power. They moved from the present moment into the future, shaping reality. They were invested in the world, and they would return, bringing with them the results of what had been spoken. Shiva wanted to help his friend Rayu, who was going through a rough time, losing everything and spiraling into despair. He knew he had to change the way he spoke about Rayu, both to himself and to others. Instead of focusing on Rayu's failures, Shiva imagined a conversation where Ryu was thriving. He pictured Ryu smiling, full of energy, talking about the incredible opportunities that had come his way. Shiva began to mentally speak to Ryu as though he were already successful. "You're doing amazing things, Ryu," he would say in his mind. "I've never seen you more fulfilled and happy." He imagined Ryu's response, full of gratitude and excitement, affirming that life had turned around for him. It wasn't long before Ryu, too, began to experience positive changes. His outlook shifted, and soon, new opportunities started flowing his way. It was clear to Shiva now, the solution to all problems was in changing inner conversations. He was the creator of his reality, and his words, whether spoken or unspoken, were shaping his life. The ancient wisdom had taught that speech and mind are one. To transform the mind, Shiva had to transform his speech. He found the biblical story of Samuel inspiring, "The Lord spake by me, and his word was in my tongue." Shiva realized that this wasn't about some external God, it was about the inner power of his own mind. His inner conversations were the word of God, and they were creating his life, whether he was aware of it or not. Shiva knew that the key to manifesting success was to speak from the premise of fulfilled desire. He had to speak as though his wishes had already come true. As he practiced this art of controlled inner speech, he began to experience the thrill of seeing his words come to life. Whether it was his career, relationships, or personal growth, everything began to fall into place as he aligned his speech with his desires. He reflected on the words of the Hermetic. "There are the gifts, which God has bestowed upon man alone, mind and speech. These were the tools for creating life." By using them rightly, Shiva knew he could transform his world. Every thought and word was a seed, and those seeds would grow into the circumstances of his life. Shiva's journey was one of continuous learning. He discovered that even when external circumstances seemed to contradict his desires, persistence in his inner conversation would bring about the desired change. He realized that signs followed, they didn't precede. The assumption of success, if persisted in, would harden into fact. Life was like a mirror, reflecting the assumptions held within the mind. As Shiva embraced this new way of living, he saw the transformation not only in himself, but also in those around him. His relationships improved, his career soared, and his sense of peace deepened. The world responded to the changes in his inner conversations. He no longer allowed negative inner talk to dominate his mind. Whenever he found himself slipping into old habits, criticizing, blaming, or worrying, he quickly shifted his inner dialogue to one of positivity and empowerment. He knew that by changing his inner speech, he could change his life. The words of the prophets echoed in his mind. "Put off the former conversation, the old man, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind." Shiva had put on the new man, the self that was aligned with success, happiness, and love. His life was proof that when you change your inner conversation, you change your world. As Shiva continued on his path, he realized that this practice of controlled inner speech was not just a personal tool for success. It was a way to bring heaven to earth. By aligning his thoughts and words with love and positive intentions, he was not only transforming his own life, but also contributing to the betterment of the world. In his heart, Shiva knew that the key to manifesting anything in life was simple. Control your inner speech, align it with your desires, and trust that the world will conform to the reality you create within. And with that knowledge, Shiva smiled at his reflection one last time, knowing that his journey of transformation had only just begun. If you are enjoying this video, please subscribe to the channel